Have you ever stayed with someone who was slowly destroying you, even as some quiet voice inside whispered that you should leave? There is a particular kind of pain that comes from loving someone who does not know how to love you back. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's subtle, like a slow erosion, a soft wearing away of your boundaries, your confidence, your laughter. One day you wake up and realize you are apologizing for things you didn't do, defending someone who doesn't defend you, and losing pieces of yourself just to keep to them close. You knew something was wrong. You felt the sting in your chest when their words spouted on, cut deeper than they should. You felt the chill of their sudden distance, their silence like a door closing. And yet, when they finally turned back toward you, even with the smallest kindness, it felt like sunlight after weeks of gray skies. You held on to those moments. You convinced yourself that if you tried a little harder, loved a little more, gently gave a little more of yourself, maybe the love you needed would finally music appear. This is the quiet trap of toxic relationships, not a trap of chains, but of hope. Psychologists call it music, intermittent reinforcement. When affection comes in unpredictable waves, when one moment they are warm and the precedence next they are cold, when they pull you close just long enough for your heart to remember what it longs for, then withdraw until you start to question whether you ever deserved love at all. Your nervous system becomes addicted to the cycle. Anticipation, longing, relief. It is not love you're chasing. It is the feeling of finally being chosen. But the truth is painful. The person who hurts you becomes the same person you rely on for comfort. And that is what makes it so hard to leave. Because walking away doesn't just mean losing them. It means facing the emptiness inside you that they once seemed to fill. Yet you are not foolish for staying. You are not weak. You are responding to wounds that began long before this person ever entered your life. You learned somewhere in your past that love is something to earn, that affection is something given in exchange for patience, for silence, for self-sacrifice, that love is not soft but conditional. To understand why we hold on to those who break us, we must look back to where music we first learned to love and who taught us that love was something we needed to chase. There is a moment in childhood that most people forget, but the body remembers. A quiet music, evening, a small house, voices rising. Behind a door, a child sitting at the top of the stairs, listening not to the words, but to the tone, the pauses, the sudden silences. They learn something there long before they have language for it. Love is unpredictable. Affection can turn sharp without warning. Safety is something you must earn. Maybe the parent was not cruel, just exhausted, distant music, overwhelmed by life. Maybe their touch was warm one day and cold the next, like hands that don't quite know how to hold. The child watches their face closely, studying every shift, every sigh, every flicker of attention. They learn to shape themselves, to stay close to warmth. They learn to become what is needed, quiet, pleasing, unproatic. They learn to disappear a little, to fit into the small spaces love allows. Attachment theory explains how these early patterns carve themselves into the nervous system. If love was inconsistent, you grow into someone who chases reassurance, who clings tightly, and fears being abandoned. This is the anxious attachment, the heart that never stops reaching. If love was distant, you learn to detach, to rely only on yourself, to believe that needing anyone is dangerous. This is the avoidant attachment, the heart that stays behind walls. And if love was both sometimes warm, sometimes frightening, you are pulled in two directions, longing and fear. This is the disorganized attachment, the heart that is confused by its own beating. You didn't choose any of this. It formed quietly like water dripping on stone. And because the child cannot blame the parent, they blame themselves. They believe if I were better, they would love me differently. And that belief becomes a lifelong ghost. It follows you into your relationships, whispering, try harder, hold on, don't lose them. Love becomes a door that only opens when you prove yourself worthy. You start to think that affection must be earned, that attention is something you must work for, that validation is the reward for shrinking your own needs. You learn to chase love, not receive it. And so, even years later, when you meet someone who is inconsistent, unpredictable, familiar in a way that feels like home, something inside you leans in, not because it is good for you, but because it feels like something you were always meant to fix. The child grows up, but the wound grows with them. Have you ever wondered why, as an adult, you tolerate what your younger self once promised you would never accept? You tell yourself you are mature, understanding, patient, but beneath those words, there is a quiet ache, a familiar fear, a need to be chosen at any cost. The child who learned that love must be earned does not disappear. They simply grow taller and learn new ways to hide. You become someone who explains your pain gently, so gently that it sounds like an apology. You say, "It's okay. I understand." Even when your chest feels heavy with the weight of unspoken needs. You forgive too quickly. You excuse behavior you know is wrong. You offer empathy to someone who does not offer the same in return. Outwardly, you look strong, the one who handles things, the one who doesn't break easily. But inside, there is a small voice, terrified of abandonment, whispering that if you stop being easy to love, you will not be loved at all. The wound becomes a mask. You confuse intensity with intimacy, chaos with passion. When someone pulls away and then returns, your heart races, not because it is love, but because it is familiar. Your nervous system recognizes the rhythm of uncertainty, the unpredictable warmth and coldness you grew up with. Music, it feels like home, even though it hurts. You find yourself drawn to people who make you work for affection, who make music you prove yourself again and again, because on some level, love that is freely given feels undeserved. You ignore the red flags, not because you don't see them, but because you have learned to reinterpret pain as meaning. You tell yourself that if you just love harder, stay longer, remain patient, one day they will finally choose you. You hold on to moments of tenderness as if they are proof of potential. You build entire futures out of temporary gestures. And when they hurt you, you apologize. You apologize for your reaction, your needs, your emotions, as if wanting to be loved gently is a dough crime. This is not weakness. This is conditioning. Neuroscience shows that the brain bonds, not to consistency, but to the strongest emotional imprint. If love once came, wrapped in anxiety, your body continues to seek that pattern, not because it is healthy, but because it is known. The mind craves what it remembers, even when what it remembers is pain. But there is science behind why love can feel like withdrawal. And understanding that is the first step toward changing the story. Music. Why does love sometimes feel less like warmth and more like a storm you can't escape? Why do you stay attached to someone who hurts you even when logic tells you to walk away? The answer isn't stupidity, weakness, or lack of self-respect. It is your brain doing exactly what it was trained to do. Psychologists call this trauma bonding, a term introduced by Dr. Patrick Kesson. It describes the emotional attachment that forms when periods of affection are mixed with moments of pain. The very person who wounds you is also the one who soothes the wound. And that creates a bond stronger than ordinary love. This bond doesn't feel chaotic. It feels necessary. It feels like survival. This is fueled by something studied decades earlier by behaviorist B.F. Skinner in what he called music intermittent reinforcement. When rewards are unpredictable, when affection comes inconsistently, the attachment becomes more powerful. If you don't know when love is coming, you try harder. You wait longer. You tolerate more. You become addicted to the next drop of tenderness, music, the next apology, the next moment where they pull you close and remind you of how it felt at the beginning. Music, your brain chemicals, play their part like clockwork. When they are loving, dopamine music floods. Your system, the neurotransmitter of excitement, desire, anticipation, your chest warms, your heart steadies, your world feels meaningful again. But when they pull away or turn cold, cortisol rises, the stress chemical that makes your stomach tighten and your thoughts spin. You feel anxious, desperate, unsteady. Then when they return, oxytocin, the bonding hormone, surges, sealing the attachment deeper. This cycle becomes a physiological loop. You are not just emotionally attached. You are chemically tethered. And the most haunting part is this. Your brain isn't choosing this person because they are right for you. It's choosing them because they are familiar. Your nervous system recognizes music, the pattern of your earliest caregivers, the inconsistencies, the longing, the reaching. This is not conscious. It is not intentional. No one wakes up and says, "Give me the kind of love that hurts me." But the heart gravitates toward what it learned first. The toxic partner is not always a villain either. Often they too are repeating what was taught to them. Two histories colliding. Two wounded children trying to love each other using broken language. And this is where the story darkens. Because once you understand that the relationship is not just emotional, but neurological, the question changes from, why don't you leave music to how do you free yourself from something? Your brain believes it needs to survive. There comes a point where love no longer feels like love. It feels like exhaustion, like waking up every day carrying a weight that no one else can see. You tell yourself you're okay, that every relationship has its challenges, that pain is just part of connection. But quietly, something inside you is fading. You stop recognizing the sound of your own thoughts. You stop remembering who you were before them. At first, it was subtle. You gave a little more than you received. You forgave small things. You let your boundaries bend. But over time, a little music became everything. Your world began to revolve around their moods, music, their needs, their storms. You learned to read the weather of their silence, to prepare yourself for the moment their tone, music shifted. You adjusted, softened, disappeared, not all at once, but slowly, like a candle, melting down to music, nothing. You become a ghost in your own life. Your laughter changes, your posture changes, the sparkle in your eyes settles into a blankers, quiet, practiced calm. Music, you're still there, but only an outline. The relationship becomes the center, and you to become a supporting character in a story where your own needs rarely make it to the page. And yet you stay, not because the pain feels good, but because losing them feels worse. Because somewhere along the way, love became a battlefield where you are always trying to prove you are worth staying for. You tell yourself that music, if you are patient enough, loyal enough, gentle enough, they will see you. They will choose you. They will change. But they are wounded too. Their shadows touch music, yours. Their fear of closeness, their fear of vulnerability, their unhealed stories, they spill into your shared space. And So the relationship becomes pain, trying to heal pain. Music, two broken mirrors, reflecting each other's fractures. You are both searching for something that neither of you knows how to give. This is the tragic illusion that suffering means depth, that chaos means passion, that intensity means fate. You begin to, I believe that real love is supposed to hurt. After all, it's what your nervous system remembers. Music, it's what your blank and want-have heart was taught. You tell yourself this is just how love is. But beneath that belief, in the quiet moments staring at the ceiling at night, holding your breath in arguments that never resolve, there is a small whisper begging for rest, something gentler, something softer, something safe. And yet, music society has trained us to call this love. Have you noticed how the world teaches you to endure love? No, matter the cost? From childhood, you are fed stories where suffering is a sign of devotion. Movies tell you that jealousy is passion, that chaos is romance, that the person who hurts you the most is the one you are meant to fight for. We are shown lovers who break each other, scream, leave, return, and it is framed as destiny. Look, the world says this is true love. It's intense. It's dramatic. It hurts. But that's what makes it real. So you learn to measure love by the depth of your wounds. You watch music, videos where heartbreak is poetic, novels where devotion means losing yourself, music and social media posts praising toxic loyalty as though staying is proof of character. No one teaches you that love can be calm, that love can be gentle, that love can feel like rest, like warmth, like safety. You begin to believe that love without pain is love, without meaning. And when you find yourself in a relationship that drains you do not question it. You recognize it. You think this is how it's supposed to be. Society applauds the one who endures. Ride or music die, they say, as if your value is measured by how much of yourself you are willing to bury. You learn to romanticize, sacrifice, to believe that leaving means you didn't try hard enough, that walking away makes you the villain, that healing yourself is selfish. So you stay because starting over feels terrifying. You stay because being alone feels heavier than the pain you music already know. You stay because you fear being judged for giving up. You stay because somewhere deep inside that childhood voice still whispers that love, music is something you must earn, not something you deserve. You stay because you are scared of the silence that comes after goodbye. But here is the truth that society never taught you. Love is not meant to be survived. Music, it is meant to be lived. A relationship is not a war to win or a battlefield to endure. Music, it is not proof of strength to stay in a place that breaks you. Endurance is not devotion. Sacrifice is to not love. Losing yourself is not loyalty. You were not born to be someone's emotional anchor while you drown. But the cost of staying is far greater than the fear of leaving. Music, there is a certain kind of tired that no amount of sleep can cure. The kind that settles in your bones, in the parts of you that once held hope. You wake up, not to a new day, but to the same quiet ache, the same heaviness in your chest, the same questions you can't quite silence. You begin moving through life like a shadow of yourself, present but distant, breathing but not fully, alive. This is what happens when love becomes a place where you are slowly erased. At first, you don't notice it. You just compromise a little. You soften your opinions, your desires, your needs, just to keep the peace. You swallow your pain so they won't pull away. You tell to yourself you're being mature, understanding, music, patient. But over time, you realize you're voice has grown quiet. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you no longer believe your words, music, matter. Your identity begins to dissolve. You forget the things that used to make you feel like you, the hobbies you once loved, the dreams, music you once chased, the spark you once carried. They fade into the background, overshadowed by the constant emotional effort of music maintaining the relationship. Your world becomes small, shrinking to the size of another person's approval. You begin apologizing just for existing. Anxiety creeps in like fog. Slowly, subtly, you start double-checking your tone, your facial expression, your presence, always trying to make sure you don't say or do the wrong thing. You rehearse conversations in your head, constantly preparing for emotional impact. Depression follows closely behind, settling like dust over everything. You feel heavy, numb, disconnected, as if your heart has been wrapped in bandages. And worst of all, a quiet belief begins to form. A belief so painful, you barely acknowledge it. Maybe this is all I deserve. You don't think it in words. You feel it in the hesitation before you speak, in the sigh as you swallow. In the past, loneliness you can't quite explain. Music, even when someone is lying beside you. Attachment. Theory explains this as emotional imprinting. When the nervous system grows accustomed to pain, it begins to interpret suffering as normal. Familiarity becomes comfort, even when it hurts. But hear this softly, without pressure, without force. You were not meant to live half a life. You were not born to disappear inside someone else's story. The love you deserve does not require you to lose yourself to keep it. There is a path inward back to your voice, back to your warmth, back to the person you were before the silence. But healing is possible not by changing them, but by returning to yourself. There comes a moment quiet, almost imperceptible, when you realize you cannot keep living like this. Not in a blaze of anger, not in a collapse of tears, but in a soft, tired exhale. The kind that comes from your soul. The kind that whispers, I cannot keep abandoning myself to be loved. It is here that healing begins, not with a dramatic decision, but with a gentle turning inward toward yourself. You start by remembering that love is not proven through suffering, that endurance is not devotion, that losing yourself is not loyalty. You were taught to equate closeness with sacrifice, but real intimacy is the opposite. Music. It is two selves standing whole, not one, disappearing to feed the other. Healing begins when you allow yourself to take up space again. Boundaries are not walls. They are doorways that determine what is allowed to enter the home of your heart. A boundary is simply you saying, this is where I end and where you begin. This is what I need to stay whole. At first, speaking these words may feel terrifying, even selfish. But the truth is, boundaries are the purest form of love for yourself and for others. They make connection safe. They make presence sustainable. And when the fear of being alone rises, remember, loneliness in freedom is still lighter than loneliness inside a relationship that empties you. Your nervous system needs time to relearn safety. Slow, breathing, grounding, touch, quiet, mornings spent with your own thoughts. These are not small things. They are acts of reclaiming your body from the cycle of anxiety and anticipation. I'll begin to soothe the place inside you that once believed survival depended on Achulok's and being chosen. You learn to choose yourself, journaling your feelings, not to justify them, but simply to witness them, helps the heart speak in a voice it has long silenced. Music, therapy, if available, can help you unravel the subconscious patterns that once felt like fate, and slowly, gently, You learn to recognize love that music does not demand your disappearance. Love that feels like exhaling, like being seen without performing, music like being held without earning it. There will be days of doubt, days when you miss the familiarity of the pain, days when your heart aches for what you hoped the relationship could have been. But healing is not linear. It is a return, step by step, to the person you prosent, where before you learn to apologize for needing love. And when you finally walk away, something profound happens. There comes a day, not dramatic, not loud, where you find yourself standing in the wreck-it, quiet of your own life. No raised voices, no tension in your chest, no constant calculations of how to be. Enough. Just stillness. And in that stillness, you feel something you haven't felt in a very long time. Music, the faint outline of yourself. You realize that the love you were chasing wasn't really about the other person. It was about a younger you. The child who once stood in the doorway, hoping someone would notice their sadness, their longing, their softness. You weren't trying to win another person's affection. You were trying to finally earn your own worth. The heartbreak was never just heartbreak. It was a mirror, a reflection of the part of you that believed love was conditional, that you had to bend to be held, that you had to shatter to be seen. You kept trying to rewrite the ending of your childhood through another person, hoping that this time the love would stay. But there is a moment somewhere at the end of the pain where your heart grows tired of running. A moment where you stop trying to be chosen and finally choose yourself. And in that moment, something shifts. Not all at once. Not in a way anyone else can see. But inside a light comes back on. Small, steady, familiar. You begin to remember who you were before the mask, before the quiet apologies, before the shrinking. You remember the way your laughter once sounded when it was real. You remember your curiosity, your tenderness, your dreams that had nothing to do with being loved by someone else. You remember your own warmth, the warmth you spent years offering to everyone but yourself. And slowly you return to yourself like someone you lost long ago. Healing does not mean you will never love again. It means you will no longer disappear to do so. It means you will recognize love that feels like peace, not adrenaline, steadiness, not desperation, music, presence, not pursuit. You will choose people who meet you where you are without needing to lose yourself to be held. And when you music look back, you will see the truth with a kind of gentle clarity. The love you were begging for was music your own, not the world's, not theirs, yours. And the most beautiful thing is this: you can give it to yourself now. Not by becoming someone else, but by finally becoming who you were always meant to be.